Hey everyone, this is Joey. Thanks for coming back for another episode of This Naked Voice. I've been sitting on this podcast for a while now, probably the better part of 2 weeks. And part of it is the perfectionist in me, thinking this isn't good enough to put out. And another part is this piece of me that just continues to want to play small and not take risks. And another part is a little embarrassed to release this episode because, again, it's this vulnerable piece where I'm putting something out there that is personal and I don't know how it's going to be received. And that's always frightening. For a long time, music has been my creative outlet. And normally it's playing with my bandmates. And for the last couple months, I haven't had that opportunity. I haven't had that option. This podcast has been my creative outlet for the last few months. And so recently, when I swung low in my own emotional state, when I started experiencing depression again, I wondered, what do I do with this feeling? How do I process this? And I thought, well, why don't I try to talk about it on the podcast and see if I can create something with this emotional state of being and see what comes of it. And it feels risky because it's new. The feelings aren't new, but the creative outlet is new. And to be honest, I'm actually having second thoughts about putting this out because I don't know exactly if this is going to A, help me, or B, be received well in any way. And that's the risk manager in me taking hold and saying, don't do this, dude. Don't do this. Put on a face that says you know what you're talking about and you got your shit together more than maybe you do. It's that confidence that people want to see. It's that confidence that people want to hear about. They don't want to really hear about the struggles. And that might be true, and maybe there's truth in it. But one thing that I know to actually be true is that the last 2 weeks have been really fucking hard for me. So without judging why that is, what do I do about it? How do I make sense of it? When I put this episode together, I had a choice. I could speak in the episode as if I was teaching. And in that way, I could use you statements. I could say things like, when you start sinking into sadness, you want to pull back from the world. You just want to hide from everybody. But what I would rather do is use I statements, because if it's true for me, I want to own my own experience and speak about only my experience. So instead, I would say, when I feel myself sinking into sadness, I want to pull back from the world and I want to hide from everybody. There's a big difference there in assuming it's true for everybody else and claiming my own experience. And if you pay close attention to my podcast, even as I talk to my guests, I try to not use those you statements. I try to phrase everything in I statements. Even if I'm pretty sure that it applies to other people and their lives, it's still important for me to just claim it as my own, without any assumptions or projections onto anybody else. So even in this episode, as I'm talking about my own experience, the invitation is to see if any of it also applies to you in your life. Using I statements isn't to say this is only my experience. It's actually just a way of saying this is my experience. I'm not going to assume that it's also yours. Maybe it is. But right now, I'm just owning that it's mine. So before we get into the episode, I want to invite you to take a minute and check in with yourself and see where you're at mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And be honest. It doesn't do me any good when I lie to myself. See what I did there? I statements. Once you've identified where you are emotionally, mentally, see if you have any judgments that come up around those feelings, so that state of being. I know for me, when I feel sad, I can go into a spiral, being sad about being sad, or being angry about being angry, or whatever combination there is. Or even when I'm productive, I can be really happy about being productive. So just noticing those judgments around the feelings is really important here. Judgments can fuel emotions, and not in helpful ways. So just noticing that they're there and not giving them any weight can be really helpful in effectively processing what's going on for me. Hopefully what's shared in this episode will shine some more light on that concept, and you'll take something away with you that's useful in your life. The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. At the end of May was my birthday, and it was a wonderful birthday. Even though we were in lockdown, I was far away from most everybody I knew. And I had a moment to myself in the evening as the sun was going down, and I just got off a bunch of video calls with friends from college and my family. And I thought, this is beautiful. I've been so productive this week. I've gotten so much done. I feel so loved, and I'm in a place where I really am loving myself in a full and complete way. And I was so grateful for that feeling. And I remembered that this feeling doesn't last. This feeling ebbs and flows, this feeling of fulfillment, this feeling of connection, this feeling of being productive. And that wasn't to be pessimistic, that was just to ground myself in the reality of nature's cycles of beginning and end. And so I sat in just that moment of recognizing that this moment is fleeting, but I also was super grateful that I was in that moment. And I recognized it. Riding this wave of fulfillment, of productivity, of goodness, however I want to describe it, that wave at some point has to come to an end. That's natural. A wave doesn't go on forever. And so the question isn't how can I extend the wave, because the wave inevitably comes to an end. The question is, when the wave is coming to an end, how do I respond? Do I have the awareness the wave is near its end? Do I have the ability to try and make a graceful exit? Do I take action to make my exit as smooth as possible? I recognize that I might come crashing down and be disoriented and get hurt. And to continue the beach analogy, I might get sand everywhere and get really uncomfortable. And who likes getting sand everywhere? It sucks. Let's cue up some music. I feel like I've got a thought process going to a flow. I'm not a surfer. I never have been. But when I was younger, there were some really wonderful waves I rode on my boogie board, if you guys remember boogie boards. And one thing I learned at that young age is that, try as I might, I don't always have control over how I make my exit from the wave. Sometimes nature just hands my ass to me, and I end up getting hurt. Right now, I'm in a time where I saw the end of the wave coming, and I still came down really hard, and I've been feeling really heavy. I thought I was going to make a more graceful exit from this wave than I did. And there's some shame that comes on when I feel like, hey, I've been doing all this work after all these years. Shouldn't I know better? Shouldn't I be able to do better getting out of this wave? And the truth is, sometimes I just don't have that much control over it. That's a hard truth to accept, and it's not something I like to admit to myself. And to continue with the analogy, now I find myself on the shore. And what comes to mind to me is that classic desert island survivor archetype, like Tom Hanks in Castaway. There's an evolution for me to experience if I can open myself up to it. This unpleasant and painful experience of the wave crashing down, for me the heaviness is sorrow, loneliness, and fear. And warranted or not, they're here. Those are the visitors at the door to my own guest house. They've swept my house empty of its furniture, and I don't know why. And my practice is learning to not just be okay with it, but to actually welcome it with open arms and listen for its guidance. That Rumi poem is one of the most beautiful poems that I know of in my life, because it reminds me that the emotions that I feel as a human being are entirely natural. They remind me that I shouldn't expect to feel happy or fulfilled or joyful or connected all the time. In fact, I don't think it's possible. So now I've had some time with my visitors, sorrow, loneliness, and fear. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily gone entirely or that they won't be back. And in this moment, I'm reflecting on what are the gifts that they've brought. And I realize that gifts can come in many forms, right? Quite literally, someone can bring me a gift and I can open it and I can have it right there in that moment. There can be something immediately gained in the present moment when someone comes to my door. But a gift might also be something not so immediate. A gift might be a seed that's been planted that needs some time to grow into its full potential. And a gift might be a song or a story. I know for me in my creative life, for me to really hear those songs or to recognize those stories from another realm, I need to really dive in to the emotions. I need to really get to know those visitors so that I can hear their songs and their stories that they're trying to share with me. I've got no bow to tie up this episode nice and pretty. I'm still unearthing the gifts or guidance that these visitors have been sent to give me this time around. I've been finding support with friends and mentors during this time, and I've been doing as much solo work as I can to figure out what needs to be figured out, to process what needs to be processed. If you're someone who is aware enough to recognize your own emotional ups and downs, can you recognize when your wave is about to come crashing down? Can you recognize when you might be feeling stranded and need some help? When you're there, when you're about to go there, who do you reach out to for support? Who are your friends and mentors who you trust to support you when things are hard? Identifying these people is crucial to my own well-being. But knowing who they are isn't enough. I need to be brave enough to actually reach out and ask for help. And this can be especially hard when I'm really down. And that's the most important time for me to actually reach out, because no one can read my mind. So my challenge to you is, if you are ever feeling really down, to reach deep down into your vulnerability, into your courage, and ask for the help that you need. Ask for the support that you need. If I'm imagining sorrow and fear and loneliness as guests that are being sent as guides from beyond, sometimes it feels like the simplest place they're guiding me to is connection with people who I feel disconnected from. One more thing, an invitation. Let's not forget that no matter how you're feeling, there's never a bad time to reach out to someone who has simply crossed your mind, someone who randomly has popped into your consciousness and you're now thinking of them. I mean, yeah, you might be okay in this moment, but who knows what's going on for them? Reach out, connect. They may really need to hear from you. That's a practice I put into place years ago after countless times hoping it would happen to me. So go ahead and reach out to someone. It means more than you know. This Naked Voice is a podcast dedicated to creativity, connection, and vulnerability. Specifically, how do we connect more deeply with ourselves and with others? This podcast is a side project from my main coaching business, Joey C. Coaching. In it, I endeavor to help people discover and express their indestructible selves. This episode was all about me being aware of my emotional states and being vulnerable enough to ask for help when I need it. And so the invitation now is for you to reach out and ask for help or support if you feel compelled. You can reach me at info@thisnakedvoice.com. Write to me with any support you're looking for, comments, questions, or feedback about the podcast. You can support this podcast by leaving a 5-star rating and review. It helps us get found more easily on all the podcast sites. I hope you got something useful out of this episode. Be well out there, and as always, be good to yourself.